Are you a manager who is eager to change the trajectory of your career? I have spent the last 23 years as a Fortune 50 leader learning from other industry leaders how to break free from limiting beliefs and habits. On the Might in Motion podcast, we focus on the 4 M's: motivation, momentum, mindfulness, and might. We bring you leaders from Fortune companies, doctors, and entrepreneurs. Their stories of living their own might in motion will inspire you to create your own action plan and achieve your goals. Welcome to Might in Motion.
Today's episode of Might in Motion is brought to you by Pantheon FM, Fortunes Magnified. Pantheon FM is changing the world through entrepreneurship. In this community, you will find everything you need to create, amplify, and monetize your world-changing business. Join us at pantheon.community/register/LAUA.
I am very excited to bring to you Randi Sue Deckard. Randi has a variety of healthcare industry experience: life sciences, oncology, tech, and financial services, with a focus on managing customer success and growth. She is the Senior Vice President of Client Engagement and oversees sales, marketing, and customer success at BESLER. She is customer obsessed, and she loves elevating sales as a profession. She is currently an ambassador for Gartner, mentor for Girls Who Sell, and co-chair for Pavilion DFW Chapter. Welcome to Might in Motion, Randi Sue Deckard. Welcome, Randi.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Mariana.
I am really excited to have you on the show. We met probably about a month or so, maybe 2 months ago now, based on our schedules, and it was such a fun conversation that I'm excited to bring it to everybody and all the listeners. You have a really interesting background. And one of the things that I wrote down last time we talked was that it kind of all started in the world of autopsies. that really intrigued me. And so just to throw you off a little bit, I'd love to know maybe one thing you learned in that part of your journey that you actually apply in your career today.
So crazy enough, in anatomy, one of the things you talk about is structure and function. And in go-to-market, you have the way that you can make that analogy between structure and function to the body is with go-to-market motions, there are different motions. And so you can have various products. And each product may have a different go-to-market motion. Like at our current company, we have, software, we have professional services, and then we also have things that are really, product-led growth, like our education. So as crazy as it sounds, structure and function is just like go-to-market. If you think about what motion you take based on the product, and you can have more than one, right? Just like kidney helps, filter. It also does other things besides just filter. And that's how I relate go-to-market. So as crazy as it sounds.
No, I like I said, I wrote that down last time we talked because that was just so curious to me that you've had this really unique journey in your career that you're able to take something that might be as simple as saying structure and function, right? And as you mentioned, kidneys and they filter. Now you can take that same thought process and apply it in your current career or the career that you've chosen since leaving that part of your career path, right? And I think that's sometimes people think, oh no, I did that back then and I can't apply anything to today. And that's not true.
Right. And I think, the other thing, just as being a trained scientist and, as part of what I did, got to have 100 autopsies under my belt. Curiosity as a scientist is one of the things that is probably one of my greatest strengths outside of, I was basically trained to fail doing experiments, right? So, and if you think about discovery in sales, discovery never stops. And qualifying just in an experiment is like always validating. Like, is this am I on the right track, like for an experiment? Well, am I on the right track for this deal? What's the next step? The micro movement. And so, experimenting, iterating, and all of those things from my science background, and the fact that failure is not a dirty word to me because I just look at go to market motion as experimenting. I'm used to looking at tons of data and, instead of, oh, what is the one chemical thing or temperature or timing that I change? What I'm changing in go to market may be, hey, we're not doing a good enough job on discovery, or we're stalling here, or our messaging isn't right. It's knowing which lever to pull in the go to market motion. So it's no different. I just have different things that I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I mean, I'm in transportation. I will
Mm-hmm.
tell you, some of the past few people I've hired came from a science background.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have a transportation background, but the problem solving skills, the willingness to your point of failing or asking questions, the curiosity is actually what makes people successful, I think, in any career path. Be that sales, transportation, whatever it might be, having that curiosity is really, really key.
Yeah, and I always wonder why. And don't tell me something isn't possible because, one of the great things about, science is, that number one, that resilience and perseverance. Like when I was doing my undergrad and, working on my paper to get my advanced research degree, I did an experiment, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because none of the names would mean anything to you. But what you can take away is I cannot tell you how many times I had a 16-hour run that failed. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you think about that, 16 hours, day after day, I did not get a result that I wanted. And, I had to do that for a year. A year.
Yeah,
A year of
a
failing.
long time.
It is a
Yeah.
long time, day in, day out, but every day or, every opportunity there was, okay, what did I learn?
Yep.
And having that mindset, and like I said, I don't failure is not a dirty word. I always talk about failing forward, right? What
Yep.
did I learn? What can I do differently? What can I teach someone else? And the other thing that makes my background so incredibly powerful is in the clinical world, if you don't document, it didn't
Mm-hmm.
happen.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I am like an avid documenter, which number one helps me um, look for patterns, but also, when I've been an individual contributor and been able to take a team, I already have, okay, here's the playbook,
Yeah.
here's everything that I did. And then what am I adjusting and versioning? Like that's my second nature because that's how I was trained. I was really surprised at a startup when I was an individual contributor. No one was documenting, and then when it came time to build teams, they got opportunities to be leaders. They were all struggling building their teams, and I was off running because I had everything already done and I could hire and show and teach and adjust continually because I had that skill set.
Right. Right. That's fantastic. I think that's great advice for anybody in a leadership role
Yep.
or wants to be in a leadership role, right? Now, when we talked last time, we talked about the fact that you're in the middle of writing a book,
Yes.
and which is very exciting. And as we talked about that book, it was a lot about the transformative mindset in women and a little bit about the difference between self-worth versus self-confidence.
Yes.
So I'd love for you to share those thoughts today with our listeners because there's so many women out there that are or men who are managing women
Yep.
and want to help women grow. Hey, these could be really great kind of keys to success to maybe help people make that transition.
Sure. So I had a light bulb moment listening to Ed Milet podcast with Jamie Lee Kurma,
Mm-hmm.
and she talked about the difference on this podcast with self worth and self confidence. So self confidence is typically something that is external in the sense that you got an award or someone gave you kudos. That's, where you have, confidence, versus self-worth is knowing who you are at your core and being unshakable regardless of what other people think about you, what your job title is, what you're earning. And, I've done the last, I don't know, 18 to 24 months. I've just been on this personal journey of self-reflection. And when I heard that, I was like, OMG.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when I have let external things let me lower how I thought about myself and how I talked to myself internally. And I literally, held up that mirror and said, no more. And that was probably um, like a huge turning point for me and others if they heard that podcast. But when I look back and all the other times that I've kind of made leaps, it was because I like really held up that mirror and said, okay, this is who I am, regardless of, I'm going to do this even because I know I'm capable, even though I haven't done this before. Sometimes you forget, or sometimes you tell yourself stories, right? And the stronger that you can be mentally and really know who you are at your core and not let those things shake you is, I think, really key to being successful. Because what I have seen, and just so many women that I talk to, and very successful women, is they tie their worth to their title, their career, and what other people say about them. And they're the ones who are suffering from imposter syndrome. You may not see it, but there's a hamster wheel in their brain.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, unfortunately, I think that is really true. And I'm sure there's men that suffer with some of that as well. Are there things that you think that as a leader we could be more in tune with to maybe recognize that within people that report to us? Because I'm really big on trying to help build legacies and helping lift others up so they can achieve that. What I see in them, I see something in them, but they may not see it yet.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the key things, obviously, is, being empathetic and really listening and watching about how people talk about themselves, or how they talk about themselves to others, or how they react to certain situations. And that is an opportunity to coach, whether, someone doesn't like to give themselves accolades, or if something happens, oh, that was so stupid of me, and words matter. And we take that in. We're all human. We all make mistakes, but it's more important to be accountable, like, and own it, and move forward. One of the biggest things, and I admit that being Canadian and being, a woman, so you're kind of like a pleaser all the way around. And in Canada, we're known for having our good manners and everything else.
This is true.
So early on in my career, I say sorry a lot, genuinely. And I had a leader say to me, that makes you look weak.
Yep.
Don't. And even though that was a long time ago, I still have to intentionally think about, something. And for example, let's say I was late. Instead of saying, I'm so sorry, but thank you so much for being patient. I'm so excited for our conversation.
Yep.
That is a complete difference. And so people give themselves away if you just watch and listen. And lots of times people don't even realize they're doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really good leaders watch and listen how people react to situations or how they deal with things. And if you address it right then and there, obviously if you're in a group setting, not then and there, but if you can address that as soon as possible and make people aware, because I think sometimes people just don't think about that. And over time, you do, whether you realize it or not, your mind, if you say, I'm stupid, or that was stupid, you self-sabotage.
Yes. That's 100%. Because to your point earlier, words do have power, like a lot of power.
Yes. And so I'm also very careful about how I speak to others, right? Because I know I know. And, even as being careful, if anyone's given me feedback that a word was triggering for them, filing that, when I speak to this person, I just need to be mindful of, right?
Right.
But it's creating that safe place if people are comfortable saying that to you as a leader,
Right.
right? You want to be approachable.
Yeah, 100%. Now, we talked a little bit as well in the green room about, sometimes we're a little bit hesitant to toot our own horn,
Yes.
right? And that, I don't know if that's I mean, I'm the same way. I think I mentioned like, yeah, well, I'm going to do a lot more of that this year. That's on my goal,
Mm.
my list, right? Is
Mhm.
that, okay, I'm going to make sure I get recognized. And so, I mean, congratulations to you. You got two big awards that just came your way. Outstanding leadership in healthcare and part of like the top 100 women in sales. I think I got that. Hopefully, I got that one right. But that's amazing that you're
Yes.
being recognized in your industry as being a leading contributor, not just as a female, but just a leading contributor, which is awesome. How do you think that other leaders or and specifically women can do a better job of singing their own praises to that point of words matter? It matters too that I also say good things and positive things about myself.
Right. So I think one of the first things is giving yourself grace. And
Mhm.
this is not about ego, right? This is about I want my team to advocate for themselves. So if I'm asking them to do things, it's things that I have to do too, right? So
Mhm.
if I'm saying you need to advocate for yourself and speak up and make sure that you toot your own horn, it kind of comes false, like you're speaking out of the side of your mouth if you don't do it yourself. And one of the things that, I really talk about, like with my team and when I'm talking to other leaders, is like, how do you celebrate wins? Because, as a leader, I always want to spotlight people and make sure that they're getting the kudos or they're mentioning their wins. And then, I always let them go first and then I share mine. And the things that have happened to me, I couldn't have done those without a team, right? The reason I've done that is because I have a team and I've had the opportunities to lead, etc.
Yeah.
So, you need to find ways to share and advocate. So how you talk, your actions, and your words match, right? Whatever that is, you got to
Yeah.
be aligned. You can't say you got to advocate more for yourself and not do it for yourself. And
Yes.
so, and part of that is, also, managing up. Like, I report to, the executive leadership. So, I make sure I toot my horn up, but I also do share with my team. But after they've gone first,
Mhm.
I feel like I don't go first as a leader. I let my team go first, but we all celebrate,
Right.
but they go first.
I love that. I know some of the things that I try to do with the teams I've led over the past few decades is around, hey, if something bad happens, let me take the bullet,
Hmm.
right? But if something good happens, I want to make sure you get
Yes.
the praise, right?
Yeah.
And that goes a long way with building trust within the team, and that doesn't mean like, hey, I'm going to cover for somebody forever, and if
Yeah.
they're cancer on the team, you still got to fix issues, but there are opportunities, I think, at times as a leader to just say, you know what, that's one that I need to take
Yeah.
to really be able to help the overall. Um, One of the things I'm working on with my whole group, which is entertaining because everybody who works for me right now is a man, is we're talking about marketing 101.
Right.
We're not in marketing. We're
Right.
in transportation, right? But it's how to each and every single one of us, how are we marketing ourselves,
Hmm.
our wins, our ideas, so that everybody ends up getting elevated.
Absolutely. And I love that you're doing that. And I think that, it's interesting because, I'm over sales, marketing, customer success. And, you know, I think, you know, the males on my team are better at advocating for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't see it as an ego thing. Whereas sometimes, like I said, I see the women sit back a little bit. And I just think it's interesting the dynamics. And so, like I said, I make a point and also in like a team is, what would you say about another coworker? Like what
Mm,
do you love about them? What do they do that, you wish you could do that you don't, you wish that was, you saw that in yourself? And, when we did that, I made everyone take their little index card home. And afterwards, like, the feedback was, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize what an impact I was making on my coworkers,"
yeah.
right? And obviously customers too, but, that was just something that I did to kind of remind everyone that, you know, people are watching and people probably think better of you than you think of yourselves at times.
Yes. Yeah. That's 100% true. I love that idea of having a note card
Mhm.
and filling it out. I think that's a wonderful idea. Now, many times I talk about taking teams from chaos to community, and community can be built not just within teams that you work with on a day to day, but also with your clients
Mhm.
and maybe even other competitors, right?
Right.
How do you think about community within the business world, and how can that help you elevate your career?
Sure. So I think community is about your network and how you connect people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about, I mean, yes, there are community platforms, so no offense. I'm not saying that those aren't valuable, but the organic way, I think, is the best way to go. So I don't care what industry you are in, you're going to have customers, competitors, internal employees. How do you get people talking to one another? And sometimes, I was just at a conference recently where I had customers have used us and a competitor. They shared what they liked, what they didn't
Mm-hmm.
like, um, and about both, which is great. And it wasn't like, knocking anyone, but as a result of that, that customer, that person, the weight of what they say is more than what I would say to a potential customer. So they were talking to some other people and they're like, oh, well, this feature is what's actually important to me, and this is how we work. So, like I said, things like that, you can create community where people can have these interactions. And if you connect them and transparently, I think the one of the ways you can earn trust is if someone has something that they need and you can't fulfill that need, if you refer them and say, I hear what you're saying, we're not the right fit, but I really need to, I really think that you should talk to so and so. Trust me, when there's another opportunity, you have built trust with that person
Yes.
because you have you're transparent and you have integrity. There's nothing worse than trying to, have a customer who's a circle go into a square, right?
Yes.
Like it does not work. Why force something? And there's enough to go around, and having the withal to, recognize that and think about relationships long term is huge.
Yeah. I think that applies across the board,
Yep.
right? I
Yep.
mean, even when it might not be a customer competitor relationship, it could be within a corporation of, hey, how do I help connect you to the right people? Because
Yeah.
maybe this isn't the right team for you, but this
Yeah.
other one is. So how
Right.
do I help you get there so you can be elevated and, because you're doing something you truly love, right?
Right.
Like I think that can apply across multiple different facets.
Right. And like in my niche, like where I am, a lot of the SMEs,
Mm-hmm.
we're at different organizations. We all bring our own thought leadership, and they have different experiences and backgrounds than I do. And so if I think someone can do a better job of helping or having a conversation, hey, I think you should talk to. And like I said, that just goes a long way. And community is small, so you either the more that you can help people and drive value for them, I always, like I say, karma and community is real.
Yes. Awesome. Now, if you could go back in time
Mhm.
and talk to yourself 10 years ago, what advice would you have given Randi back then that could have really helped you, the Randi now?
Yeah. So one of the things that I wish I would have done sooner is have a diverse network. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's only been in the past like 3 to 4 years, to be candid, that I have a diverse network. And what I mean by that is like outside of my particular niche. And I wish I'd done that sooner, because I've realized that you just never know in business who you meet and who you can connect. So the better you are at being a connector and
Mm-hmm.
driving value in your network, the more valuable you are as a relationship, or you come top of mind. And so now I have relationships, not just in healthcare, but across the board, SaaS, professional services, IT, cybersecurity, you name it, right? And I just think that that makes a huge difference. And I wish I had started that earlier. I was just really narrow focused in the field that I was in at the time.
Yeah, I mean that is a huge thing, I think, for people to open themselves up
Hmm.
to have these broader connections. And I know, for me, that's been a huge change in my life just in the past year, right? Our paths would probably have never crossed,
Right.
but now they have. And that's what I think is so cool, because now who knows what 6 months from now that connectivity is going to generate for either one of us or somebody within our network, because now Randi can say, oh, I know Mariana, or vice versa.
Hmm.
Now, let's say people want to connect with you because they're like,
Right.
okay, everything she said is resonating. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Sure. Definitely go to LinkedIn. That's the easiest place to find me. And I do look at my DMs.
I know, me too. Like, I'm a real person. If you send me a
Yes,
DM,
I will respond.
yes, and I will add that to the show notes. So you,
Okay.
you don't see it on here if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, but we'll get it added to the show notes. So you can definitely click a link there to connect directly with Randi. So um, every one of these podcasts, what I love to do is I love to kind of recap some of the podcasts. So I wanted to share with you and with the audience some of those nuggets that I wrote down. My handy pen that I love, just kind of scribbling notes as we talk. So structure and function is where we started the conversation, and it was around autopsies of all things, but that applies across the board. If you're doing a go-to market promotion, or you've got a project within your supply chain, for example. For me, I love that concept of structure and function, right? When you have that, you can apply that mindset. The same thing, Randi was a trained scientist, so she had to have that curiosity. She was trained to fail and look at discovery and qualifying, to never stop. Well, that can also apply what she's doing now within sales, right? And that can apply to any one of you. The same thing with documenting, right? If you're a scientist, you have to document everything, because if you find some big discovery, you've got to have the proof. Well, already having that in play of that documentation actually helped her in her career. So as teams were built around her, she already had, here are our standard operating procedures on how we do different tasks. And so she was able to make some leaps because of that. We also talked about the difference between self-worth and self-confidence. So self-confidence is driven from an external place, like awards, but your self-worth is really knowing who you are and what your values are, and what you think of yourself, regardless of what maybe other people might think of you. And I put that in quotation marks. So when she heard that definition on a podcast, it really made her a leap for her, right? So that knowledge really allowed her to think about, how can I grow more, because it's not reliant on other people. It's now because of what her self-belief is. And if you lead teams, it's key to listen and be very aware of how your teams talk about themselves. So if there's a member on your team that has that negative self-talk that they're saying out loud on a regular basis, it's an opportunity to pull them aside. It's an opportunity to lean into them and help them develop those better habits. And then as you talk about celebration of self and your awards and your accomplishments, it should not be about ego. It's about being your own best advocate. And there's nothing wrong with being that advocate for oneself. And then we talked a little bit at the end about community and networking, and having that network allows you to actually help others, which allows that drive of additional value. And you said that you wish you had a more diverse network before, 5 years from now, because that would really help you where you are today. And so I challenge everyone, reach out to Randi on LinkedIn, like help her continue to grow her network, because, I think all of us win when we're able to make those connections and help each other level up. So this was an awesome conversation. I knew it was going to be, Randi. And thank you again so much for joining the Might in Motion podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome.
Thank you for tuning into Might in Motion. If you learned something about motivation, momentum, mindfulness, or might, please like, comment, and share. Thank you.